Until now, as I mentioned before, in this part we will see cognitive linguistics from an experimental viewpoint. The title of the workshop in this part is Introduction to Experimental Research in Cognitive Linguistics, which will be instructed by Dr. Ramin Golshaie. Dr. Golshaie holds his PhD in linguistics from Tarbiyat Modares University, and now he is the Assistant Professor of Linguistics at Al-Zahra University. His research interests are mostly in the fields of experimental and usage-based linguistics, with a special focus on cognitive approaches to syntax, semantics, and discourse processing. Dr. Golshaie is included among those few Iranian linguists who has a special attention to both theoretical and experimental aspects of cognitive linguistics. The seminal book, Methods in Cognitive Linguistics, which has been translated by him, is an important source of linguistic methodology in Iran. The time allotted to this part is an hour, and we have 10 minutes for your questions.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ramin Golshaie from Linguistics Department of Al-Zahra University. Is my voice loudness fine?
Yes, Dr. Golshaie, that's perfectly fine.
I'm very pleased to be at this great event. And I'm going to talk about experimental research in cognitive linguistics. I will be focusing on two just issues in this mini workshop, and they are the experimental methods that are available to cognitive linguists. And actually, I'm going to review them or introduce them, and also the sources and tools that are available for cognitive linguists. So this mini workshop is not actually about designing experiments or data analysis or statistical tests or so on. So these are the main just themes of this mini workshop. So let's have a look at the overview of my presentation. So I will review some basic principles of the cognitive linguistics and the main criticism in terms of methodology. Then we will look at introspection as the main method in modern linguistics and also in cognitive linguistics. And then we will see some criticisms of introspective method. And then we will move on to the experimental methods that are available, and they are actually used in recent cognitive linguistic studies. And after introducing these methods, we will see some tips for good experimental research in cognitive linguistics or in linguistics generally. And we will see some tools and software available and also some useful books. And finally, I will summarize the main points of this presentation. So, cognitive linguistics, as you know, is a modern school of linguistics that emerged in 1970s and in opposition to formal approaches, which were very fashionable those days, like Chomsky's generative linguistics. And since it's not a single theory and it encompasses distinct and complementary theories, so it is always usually called a movement or enterprise. And in cognitive linguistics, the relationship between mind, language, and bodily experience is investigated. The central premises of this school is that the function of language is to convey meaning. Grammar emerges from usage. And the third one from Dabrowska, I'm citing here, is linguistic description must rely on constructs that are psychologically real. So this is actually an interpretation of the cognitive commitment of cognitive linguistics. But our concern in this presentation or mini workshop is this third point that linguistic descriptions, many psychologists or just psycholinguists believe that are not psychologically real. So we will see uh, the reason and what criticisms are. So actually, uh, uh, we see that cognitive linguistics has been criticized for not paying enough attention to psychological reality of its theories. So let's see why the psychological reality of CL theories has been questioned. We turn to introspection, which is the common methodology in linguistics, and it's been common also from the beginning of cognitive linguistics. I'm citing Talmi here for a definition of introspection, and that is a conscious attention volitionally directed by a language user to particular aspect of language as they manifest in his cognition. So this is a very common method in linguistics, and for example, doing grammatical judgments carried out by generative linguists is of this type. So the main method in theorizing in Chomskyan linguistics has been, for example, introspection. And also, according to Dabrowska 2016, the early fundamental work in cognitive linguistics also relied on introspective evidence. For example, the conceptual metaphor theory, mental spaces, cognitive grammar, and cognitive semantics. Um, but what is wrong with introspection? There's been a lot of just criticisms of introspection in the literature and also in psycholinguistics literature, but I'm mentioning just two of them from Gibbs here, that different people have different introspective judgments, and also unconscious thought processes are not accessible to introspective judgments. Many psycholinguists and also uh, experimental cognitive linguists believe that introspection is good for making hypotheses, but not for testing hypotheses. So, for example, you use your data according to this diagram. For example, you begin from data, you use your introspection to make some hypotheses in terms of mental representations, and then you proceed into testing those hypotheses. And this is where experimental methods or generally empirical methods come into scene, like in methods used by psycholinguists, by cognitive psychologists, or neurolinguists. Um, So let's see what experimental methods are. They are mainly or broadly classified into just two domains. One online methods and one offline methods. Online methods just assess or access real-time cognitive processes. So when you are doing a task or comprehending a sentence, uh, and you want to know what's happening when someone is comprehending a sentence, you use online methods. But if you want to just access the result of a cognitive process, for example, after understanding a sentence, what the subject or participant is just thinking, you can use offline methods. Online methods just can be subdivided to direct and indirect one. In direct methods, you're measuring a physiological response to a stimulus, and they are very high-tech devices like EEG, fMRI. But in indirect methods, you measure a behavioral response to a stimulus and infer processes underlying that behavior. So, for example, in this category, we have eye tracking or reaction times, which you may be familiar. So in indirect methods, you infer something about that behavior. For example, if you are doing a, reaction time study, so you measure how fast the participants are responding to a stimulus, you make inferences about the speed of that just response. So these are online methods. We are just going to discuss the indirect methods in this mini workshop, and also an offline method like comprehension tests, which are just paper and pencil tests usually, and you ask questions about participants and they answer, and you can see, you study what they have thought or what representations they have made in their mind. So some indirect methods that are used in cognitive linguistics recently are lexical decision measures, compatibility effect, eye tracking, mouse tracking, gesture analysis, and comprehension tests. So we start with lexical decision measures. In lexical decision task, you usually assess the relative accessibility of a word following an expression. So short response latencies show more activation and more accessibility of the target term. And the rationale behind these tasks is that semantically similar concept can prime, that means partially activate each other because they are more closely related in the memory. So, for example, in a task, for example, you show participants a word like apple, so it is a prime word, and then after that word, you may show two words. In one condition, you can show a related word like banana. So apple and banana are both related semantically. So you expect to get a faster response after just presenting participants the target word. And also in another condition, you may have a target word like school, which is unrelated to apple. So the result is that you will get a faster response to the banana, the target word that is related to apple. And this measure has been extensively used to test cognitive linguistic theories. For example, in the domain of conceptual metaphor theory. And I will show you an example from conceptual metaphors. As you are familiar with conceptual metaphor, a conceptual metaphor is a cross-domain mapping in the conceptual system. So, linguistic metaphors are surface realizations of those conceptual mappings. For example, in everyday expressions, you may say a relationship has hit a dead end. So this expression is a realization of the conceptual metaphor love is a journey. So you have the concept of relationship, which belongs to the domain of love, and also here in the sentence you have word dead end, which is just a concept belonging to the domain of traveling in the space, or here as the domain of journey. But the crucial question here is that do people activate conceptual metaphors when reading metaphoric expressions? Does the idiom, for example, blowing his stack, activate the conceptual domain of heat? This is actually the question asked by Gibbs and his colleagues. And their prediction was that if the heat domain of the metaphor is accessed, the heat related expression will get a faster response. So they design a lexical decision task, and they give participants the idiom he blew his stack. You know that this idiom means to get very angry, but its literal meaning is something just related to the domain of heat, chimneys, and just explosion. So the heat word is just the heat word belongs to this domain. And after presenting the prime, for example, as the target, they give participants two words. For example, in one condition, they see the word heat. In other condition, they see the word lead. So here, heat is related to the domain of metaphor. And they actually find that the response to heat word or heat target word is uh, just faster than the non-related target. So they confirm their hypothesis or the conceptual metaphors hypothesis that, for example, in these idioms, the underlying just conceptual domain can be activated. Uh, Another method that we want to introduce today is compatibility effect, which actually it is based on reaction time or response time, just measures. Uh, but it's interesting that this method has been used to test embodied cognition thesis in language comprehension. According to this view of language comprehension, meaning involves the activation of perceptual, motor, social, and affective knowledge that characterize the content of utterances. So, for example, when you read or hear a word or sentence, for example, if you hear the word kicking, according to this embodied cognition thesis, uh, that part of your brain which is responsible for kicking, I mean the motor area, uh, gets some partial activation. So this is what this theory predicts. But the research question that Stanfield and Zwan, 2001, asks is that do people perceptually simulate the content of sentences during comprehension? So they predict that after presenting subjects with a sentence, if you show them an image which is compatible with the content of that sentence, they will respond rapidly compared to the condition where the picture is not related to the content of the sentence. For example, after reading a sentence like the man hammered the nail into the wall, so as you see in the picture, the second picture, which shows a horizontal just nail, is compatible with the content of this sentence. So they design an experiment and ask the uh, participants to read the sentence and indicate if the object following the sentence has been mentioned in the sentence or not. So if you notice the rationale of this task, both images should get a yes response because it's been mentioned in the sentence. But the response to the second one should be faster because it is compatible with the content of the sentence. In fact, if participants simulate the content of the sentence, so they make a mental image of the sentence, uh, it should be compatible with a horizontal nail. So, in fact, it was what did found. Another method which is getting very popular these days in cognitive linguistic research is eye tracking, which can be used to study real-time cognitive processes. In fact, research shows that eye movements during cognitive activity just resemble those to those movements that are happening during perception and manipulation of objects in the world. So, if you study eye movements, you can infer what the participants are thinking of or what cognitive processes are going on underlying those just cognitive activities, like, for example, language comprehension. And two main parameters of eye tracking is fixations and saccades. Fixations are those, in fact, eyes remaining motionless for a short time on the stimuli. For example, in this picture, you can see the yellow and green circles, which show the eyes have fixated their fixation locations. And also saccades are the movements of the eye. So you see the yellow lines connecting the just circles, and those are saccades. So by how just scientists or psycholinguists study just eye tracking uh, patterns, they study the order of fixations and length of the fixation. So, if a word has been fixated more, so there may be something going on, which, depending on their hypothesis, can be meaningful and can be indicative of a cognitive process. And there is also a paradigm within the eye tracking method, which is called visual world paradigm. According to this method, participants listen to a linguistic stimulus, and while they are listening to the stimulus, their eye movements are recorded. So this method is especially useful to study language processing in children and people with impaired written skills. And also, it is useful to study attention when processing speech and relating its content to objects in the world. I have one uh, example here, citing Diviak et al. 2020. They used visual world paradigm to study construal in language. As you know, the concept of construal is very important in cognitive grammar. Uh, to define construal, we can say that two grammatical possibilities to express a single situation constitute two different construals. So, for example, if you have an active and a passive sentence describing the same situation, you have two different construals. And here is the question that Diviak and colleagues ask. Do active-passive construals lead to differences in attending to a visual scene? Um, so in order to answer this question, they design a task, and in that task, participants listen to an active or passive sentence, and they then look at a picture. For example, participants are presented with a sentence like, the policeman arrested the thief. This is the active version, and in passive version, uh, they are presented with the thief was arrested by the policeman. And after just hearing these sentences, they found that after active sentences, uh, just they, according to this heat map image, the fixations on the three semantic roles, the agent, patient, and the action or the event itself, uh, there wasn't any significant difference. But in passive sentence, as you can see in the bar graph, the fixation on the patient and the event was meaningfully just higher or more compared to the agent. So they conclude that according to these findings, they conclude that different construals can lead to different patterns of visual attention. Um, Another method, which is also a recent one, is mouse tracking, and it resembles that eye tracking in that you have a software which tracks the movements of the mouse or the cursor of the mouse on the screen. So by recording and analyzing mouse movements, uh, just you can study relevant questions or concepts. Um, in mouse tracking also you can study real-time cognitive processes. For example, in this method, mouse trajectories, temporal and spatial dynamics can be recorded and studied. In cognitive linguistics, this method can be used to study, for example, prototype effect, embodied language comprehension, and also bilingualism. And here is an example from using mouse tracking to test the theoretical position in cognitive grammar. I cite Langeker 1986 here. He says, like lexicon, grammar provides for structuring and symbolization of conceptual content and is thus imagic in character. When we use a particular construction or grammatical morpheme, we thereby select a particular image to structure the conceived situation for communicative purpose. In an experimental study, we just asked the question, can grammatical aspect affect the way people activate event knowledge? You know that in grammar we have two main kinds of aspect, grammatical aspect, which is one is perfective and one is imperfective. In perfective aspect, which is realized in a sentence like Sarah has sliced the apples, the action actually is finished, and the focus is at its end point. But in imperfective or ongoing aspect, which is realized in the sentence, Sarah is slicing the apples, uh, the ongoing nature of the action is just emphasized. So these are two different grammatical aspects which are indicated by, for example, in English, by ed and just to have, and in imperfective aspect, which is indicated by to be and ing. These are grammatical morphemes that can mark these two aspects. So, according to what Langeker says, we predicted that. Okay, I told you the question. Okay, can grammatical aspect affect the way people activate event knowledge? And our prediction was that in an action event, imperfective aspect will activate the implied instrument more than the perfective aspect. So we designed a task and asked the participants to read, for example, either one of these sentences. And after that, we showed them a picture and asked them if the following picture had been mentioned in the sentence. For example, participants read the sentence, Sarah has sliced the apples. And after that, we showed them a target image like this knife. And we reasoned that in imperfective aspect, because the focus of the event is just in slicing the apples, participants may just make a mental image of slicing those apples, and in that mental image, a knife would be present. But that knife would not be present in the perfective sentence because the focus of this aspect is on the end state, not the ongoing event. So we reasoned that participants would mistakenly believe that the knife had been mentioned in the imperfective sentence. This mistake could just create some deviations in mouse movements when they start to just put just press one of two options, for example, yes or no. The mouse movement would be deviated toward the yes just response button. So that deviation is recorded by the program. And you can see in the just graph at the right side of the slide that a slight deviation in the imperfective, which the blue line, you can see the blue line, there is a very slight deviation at the bottom of just at the tail of the S shape diagram. So we confirm this theoretical position that grammatical morphemes could just like lexical items can cause or the subjects to build mental images. Um, Let me move. Yes, we have gestures, and gestures is also very interesting. Just these days, multimodal studies of language just is getting very popular. In gesture, we just we the hand move the movements of hands and body that accompany speech are called gestures, and they are a very valuable source of information on language production and comprehension. And there's evidence that language and co-speech gestures are thought to be processed simultaneously. For example, it's been shown that gesturing can facilitate lexical retrieval. In cognitive linguistics, you can use gestures to study image schemas, conceptual metaphors, and mental spaces. Uh, Here, you can see two pictures of Mark Johnson. I've taken from Switzer 2007. When he is talking about concepts and states of affairs, you see that he is making his hands like just uh, in the shape of a sphere. So you can just see that the conceptual metaphor or image schema of ideas or objects can be realized here in terms of gestures. So we think of abstract things like concepts in the form of just objects. So it provides linguists with just independent evidence to test their linguistic hypotheses about image schemas or conceptual metaphors. And also here we have an interesting study by Casasanto and Yasmin, 2010. They ask just do right-handers associate good concepts with their right hand and left-handers with their left hands? This is interesting question. They study just candidates, presidential candidates from Democrats and Republicans. So you can see here some of them are left-handers like Obama, and some of them are right-handers like Bush and John Kerry. And they study their just they watch to their speech and study their gestures, and they find that when they are talking about good things, right-handers just gesture with their right hands more than their left hands, and vice versa for left-handers. And this gesture study shows that we associate good concepts most of the time with dominant side of our body. And I think this is the final, our final method here, which is comprehension test, which belongs to the offline category. In these methods, you can, with these methods, you can explore participants' comprehension and mental representations of a text. They are less costly methods, so it's very easy to implement, and they don't need very high-tech equipment. You can implement them using paper and pencil or simple computer programs, like, for example, questionnaires. And they are mainly used in discourse comprehension studies, for example, to study the framing effect of metaphors in discourse. And here I have an example from Thibodeau and Boroditsky, 2011. The research question is, do different conceptualizations of crime cause people to propose different solutions for eliminating it? So they design a task and ask the participants read a text framed by crime is a beast or crime is virus metaphor and answer two questions. So as you see in this picture, uh, when crime is conceptualized as a virus, you in the domain of crime, you have social environment, which is mapped to physical environment. And also, when addressing this problem in the domain of crime, you have social reform, which is mapped to diagnosis and treatment because you have conceptualized crime in terms of virus. So you will, it is highly probable that if you conceptualize crime in terms of virus, you will support for education and social reform and making improval to economy. But if you conceptual crime in terms of beast, so you have individual aggressor, which is mapped to individuals in the crime domain, and also law enforcement, which is mapped to hunting and caging in the beast domain. So if you conceptualize crime in the beast source domain, is probably you will probably support for a measured enforced by law or like just making more having more police forces or prison. And they actually their hypothesis was confirmed, and the questions were, what does the city need to do to reduce the crime? And the second question was, underline the part of the report that was influential to your answer. And the results show that when you conceptualize crime in terms of beast, you support more enforcement than reform. Of course, in the virus just scenario, the participants also just propose enforcement of law than just reforming. But the difference between these two conceptualizations was significant. So, as you can see in the diagram, in the beast scenario, the proportion of enforcement is greater than compared to the virus condition. And interestingly, when these participants were asked to underline the part of report that was influential to their answer, they didn't realize that the metaphor was guiding their just answer. They underlined the statistics or those part of the report that was related to just statistical information. Um, and here we have some tips for good experimental research in cognitive linguistics. First, it is advised to start from a theoretical claim, then make a precise, testable, and falsifiable hypothesis. Then just it's better to have alternative hypotheses for explaining the same data. and then you derive testable predictions from the hypothesis, and then you test your predictions using experimental methods. For example, here we have a theoretical claim by Lakoff that conceptual metaphors are used constantly and automatically with neither effort or awareness. So, based on this claim, we can have two alternative hypotheses and one null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is novel and conventional metaphoric expressions do not activate CMs, conceptual metaphors. Uh, Hypothesis one is novel and conventional metaphoric expressions equally activate CMs, and the second hypothesis is novel metaphoric expressions activate CMs more than conventional expressions do. So you have hypotheses here, and based on these hypotheses, you make predictions. The prediction for the null hypothesis is that after reading prime sentences with novel CMs, conventional CMs, and non metaphoric sentences, participants' reaction time to CM related target word will be equal. So, this is your prediction for null hypothesis. Uh, and for first hypothesis, you may predict that after reading prime sentences with novel and conventional CMs, participants' RTs to CM-related target words will be equally faster than after reading non-metaphoric sentences. And for second hypothesis, your prediction would be after reading prime sentences with novel CMs, participants' reaction time to CM related target words will be faster than after reading sentences with conventional CMs and non metaphoric sentences. And then you design an experiment, and you will see which one of these predictions just is confirmed. And here you see some free tools and software for just making experiments. For example, for reaction time experiments, you can use DMDX, Open Sesame, and PsychoPy. All of them are free. For studying gestures, you can use ELAN, which is developed by the Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics. The program is very interesting. You can just record a video. You can load the video into the program, and you can define several tiers in the program to enter the information. For example, the linguistic, you can transcribe the linguistic data, and you can put them into different layers. For example, you can just transcribe them in terms of phonetics. You can, in one layer, you can just have words. In the other layer, you can have the syntactic, for example, information like subject, object. In the semantic layer, the semantic rules. And also you can define a gesture layer to just show that, for example, in this just point of the video, what the participants is gesturing about, or what is the length of the gestures. So you can study these gestures by annotating your data. And for mouse tracking, there are some programs available like Mouse Tracker, and also Open Sesame has some just functionalities to run to make experiments using just to mouse track the stimuli. And also for statistical analysis, today using R programs programming language is very just is getting the standard just, method or standard way of doing statistics. It is very powerful, free, and standard in language sciences. It has extensive shared libraries and packages. And also you can share its data and codes when you submit your publication to journals. So it meets the open science requirements. It has excellent visualization capabilities, and there are numerous books and tutorials available for language scientists. For example, here I have listed some of those books. The first row is related to methodology, for example, Introduction to Experimental Linguistics, quantitative research methods for linguists, methods in cognitive linguistics, and research methods for psycholinguistics and the neurobiology of language. And also for data analysis, we have several books. The first one is very general introduction to R by Andy Field, and then we have Harold Boyen's Analyzing Linguistic Data. And the two last books are very accessible, especially for linguists. One is Statistics for Linguists by Bodo Winter, and the last one, How to Do Linguistics with R by Natalia Leshina. And here we arrive at the summary of this presentation. So the main points of today's workshop are introspection is useful for hypothesis making, but has serious limitations for hypothesis testing in cognitive linguistics. Cognitive linguists need to care more about psychological reality of the theories. Theories of cognitive grammar, conceptual metaphors, image schemas, and mental spaces can be explored by online and offline experimental methods. Online methods measure real-time cognitive processes, but offline methods measure the result of cognitive processes. Offline methods are less costly and need no special equipment. Most online methods in CL are based on measuring reaction times, eye tracking, mouse movement, and analyzing gesture. And good experiments need precise hypotheses and predictions derived from theories. And these are references used in this presentation, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Golshaie. It was really enlightening. We hope you find the panel informative and useful. And my special thanks go to all my colleagues in SOLAB. It's more than 7 or 8 months that they are planning and organizing this conference. We look forward to seeing you in the rest of the conference. Until next time, good luck and goodbye.